In this episode, I get to sit down with the amazing Jamie Gilliam. She's a friend and a longtime client of mine, and wow, Jamie's story is full of struggle and triumph. She's beat cancer not once, but twice. She's built a seven-figure business after losing everything. She also became a doctor after 40. Oh, and did I mention she did all this while raising 7 kiddos? This conversation is for anyone who is in need of an example, because Jamie's story proves that no matter your current circumstances, if you know what you want and you trust yourself enough, you can create anything. What you'll learn is to trust your gut and advocate for your own health when traditional medicine fails to provide answers, and how doing the deep work and a few mindset shifts are crucial for business success, and why it's so important to trust yourself and start small. This is important because if you're like me, you felt at times that the odds are stacked against you and that you may never succeed. But Jamie shows us that no story is complete as long as you're alive, and exactly what believing in yourself can do for your future. I love it. Well, Jamie, thank you for coming and joining us today. This is a conversation I've been looking forward to for quite a while, and not just because of the relationship that you and I have and how much I adore you, but also I think I'm going to learn a lot about just kind of the business side and your experience as you kind of grew through certain stages. Obviously, I've known you for going on well over 3 years at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think
2020-ish.
2020.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 3 going into 4 years. And I've been, very fortunate to learn not only a lot about you, but a lot about, your business progress from the time that we met up till now. But I think there's going to be a lot of things that I have genuine questions about that I don't think we've ever discussed.
Right.
So with that, I would love just to toss the baton back to you for a moment. And if you were to share kind of what you do, who you do it for, and just kind of a little bit of that brief summary that you would like a complete group of strangers to hear, like what would you tell us?
So I'm a doctor of integrative medicine. And what we do at my clinic is we look at the body as a whole and we evaluate comprehensive labs. We evaluate medical history, symptoms, lifestyle, any medications somebody is taking, any supplements, and then determine what is going on. Why is a person struggling with these symptoms they are experiencing? And then determine what the best treatment modalities are for them to be able to feel their best and also look their best. And I provide telehealth services. So we work with people all over the United States. We do work with people outside of the United States, but in those cases, we are not able to offer labs or medications, but we partner with providers in certain countries who do offer those services in conjunction with the holistic care that we offer.
I love it. And then just out of curiosity, what led you to pursue this particular field?
So my husband and I owned a gym,
Mm-hmm.
and I was in the fitness industry for a few decades, and I got sick out of
Mm-hmm.
nowhere. It was probably brewing for quite a while. And I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer and then diagnosed with cervical cancer, then autoimmune disease. And I also was in perimenopause at that time. And I was not getting proper care from my conventional medicine doctors. They were not providing the proper lab work. They were not listening to me.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it took a year and a half just to get my thyroid cancer diagnosis. They kept telling me I had anxiety and that I was having panic attacks. And all of my lab work was normal because thyroid cancer doesn't show up in lab work. And I finally
Wow.
demanded that somebody look in my neck because I knew there was something in my neck. And they sent me for an ultrasound. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. I had a thyroidectomy. And that's really when all of my problems began. I started
Mm-hmm.
struggling with my weight, even though I was training, even though I was managing my nutrition. The doctor kept telling me to eat less, move more, and that I didn't have a weight problem. But I had gained
Mm-hmm.
almost 20 pounds and I felt like crap. I couldn't remember things. And then I was diagnosed with cervical cancer. A friend called me and said, "Hey, I think you need to try this holistic approach." And I thought she was a wackadoodle. I was a little caught off guard. And I thought, you know what? I don't want to have another surgery. I don't want to have a hysterectomy and radiation. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm going to give this 6 months and I'm going to do this protocol. And it worked. And I got an NED status and I didn't have to have a hysterectomy or radiation. So I went back to school and I wanted to learn more about holistic care. So I started studying holistic care. And then I went back to school for integrative medicine because I believe in total body care. I believe in
Mm-hmm.
holistic care. I also believe that medication and surgeries and different conventional treatment modalities can be life changing and life saving for people.
Mm-hmm. So you went from anxiety to a cancer diagnosis.
It happens more often than people realize. Most people are blown off and told they have anxiety when there is a physical problem going on in the body.
I love it. So I'm going to pause for a second. Does it keep freezing?
Mm-mm.
My side keeps freezing, and I don't on your camera, and I don't know if it's recording the audio. It might be recording on your side. I just don't know for sure.
Hmm. It's not, well,
Uh,
you froze in the beginning, but then you were fine.
okay. Obviously, we can edit this part out, but I just wanted to make sure you weren't experiencing it. We'll play with it. If it's there, it's there. If not, we'll find some good stuff anyway. But you were just saying, so I didn't catch the part. I hadn't heard this before. So you were being told that you had anxiety or you were having panic attacks, and you had what, like, was a gut feeling, intuition? How would you describe it, that you knew you needed something, more specific, and you sounds like demanded them to take a closer look at the neck?
Well, I had had anxiety in the past and I'd
Mm-hmm.
had panic attacks, and I knew that my symptoms weren't related to that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having some anxiety because I felt like something was wrong. So it's a complex issue because if somebody's not feeling good and they feel like something's wrong within their body and they keep being told that they're fine, they can develop anxiety because of the
Mm-hmm.
stress of what's going on with their healthcare and how they're feeling. So I was choking on food and I
Mm-hmm.
literally would choke whenever I would eat. And it would be a few seconds of me not being able to breathe or swallow. And then my throat would be sore the rest of the day. I'd gotten to where I was really just drinking shakes and eating soft food. And
Mm-hmm.
I had pain in my neck, ear, jaw. My eardrum kept rupturing for no apparent reason. And I
Oh
was
wow.
having facial spasms on one side of my face. And it felt like there was a rock in my throat. I was waking up in the middle of the night, feeling like I was choking. I was scared to go to sleep because I thought I might die. And
Mm.
all of those symptoms were from cancerous nodules on my thyroid pressing on everything in my neck.
Oh wow. Wow. And if how or about how old were you when all of this was taking place?
43.
So you were 43 at the time of the first diagnosis?
43 as I was going through all of the symptoms.
Okay.
44 when I was finally diagnosed.
So at 43, you started experiencing symptoms that you knew weren't just your run of the mill anxiety, frustration, crazy life kind of stuff. And you went through whatever that roller coaster looked like, and finally got an appropriate diagnosis at 44 with thyroid cancer. And if I understand correctly, you were saying, how long did it take you to go from that diagnosis to deciding to go to school and, kind of hit this thing head on and educate yourself?
It's about 6 months because I got my or my cervical cancer diagnosis within a few months of my thyroidectomy.
Mm,
So it was about 6 to 7 months. And during that time, I was already studying. And then I
mm-hmm,
decided to go back to school because I think I knew, as I knew that that protocol was working, that I wanted to help other people because I knew what it felt like to not be heard
mm,
and to be made to feel like you're crazy.
mm-hmm,
And I remember we went to the ER. My husband took me to the ER because I my face had spasmed and it
mm-hmm,
looked like I was having a stroke.
mm,
And on the right side of my face, and my arm was going numb, and I start freaking out cuz I think this is it. I'm dying.
mm-hmm.
And he takes me to the ER and they did a CT scan and then told me it was a panic attack, gave me Ativan and sent me home. And I remember my husband looking at me and saying, "Well, you are kind of stressed." And I thought to myself, nobody really understands that I know this is not stress related. I know it's not anxiety. Was I in the middle of an anxiety attack at the time? Yes, but what brought that on was my face spasmed
Mm-hmm.
and my lip was pulled up on one side. This whole side of my face was cinched up.
Mm,
And it was from those nodules pressing on everything in my neck, which caused those muscle spasms. And then, of course, it was radiating down my arm because you have nerves. It's not always a stroke if you have pain running down your arm, but
right.
that's what we typically think of. So I'm thinking, this is it for me. And they just did not do enough investigation, especially as I kept going back trying to get help. The
Mm-hmm.
response was always, "You're healthy, you work out a lot, your labs are normal, we can't find anything wrong with you." And nobody thought to just look at my neck. Maybe there's something in her neck because all of my symptoms were focused around my neck and then radiating from there.
So, and I know you can't give like a direct answer to this question, but I'm very curious, not just from a professional perspective, but from your personal, having lived through it, experience. What would you say to those that, we put so much, I guess, weight in the opinion of our caregivers, right? Of the doctors, especially, to do the right test, to do, to and I know the body's a crazy place, and there's still so much that's unknown, and may forever be unknown. But I hear countless stories of uh, individuals that just kept saying like, "There's something else." Like I gut feeling, and doctor after doctor after doctor, sometimes one, sometimes many different opinions, try to convince them that it's something minor, or like you were saying, it's just anxiety, or it's just this or that, only to find out later that no, they had something very serious going on. They had a gut feeling that it wasn't right, but they weren't they weren't getting the, I don't know, the, call it the attention, or people just weren't taking them as seriously as they needed them to. Like what would you say to someone that is maybe experiencing something similar, and is kind of being almost gaslighted, not I would say unintentionally, but that's essentially the same thing, right? Like you're being kind of told to believe something that your gut is telling you isn't true, but yet so many opinions around you from people that you believe and trust know what they're looking for, say that you're fine. Like what would you say to someone that has this gut feeling, and people around them, even their loved ones, are like, the doctors are even telling you you're fine, like chill out.
So I think first of all, we're conditioned to trust our caregivers. I think from an early age, we're
Mm-hmm.
taught if you're sick, you go to the doctor, they give you medicine, and you're better.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot of discussion about the labs that are being ordered, what is being evaluated, and what treatment options are available. And I think number one, we have to be responsible for our own bodies and for our own
Mm-hmm.
healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to do our own research, and we have to seek out people that we trust and recognize if they have our best interest at heart. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
healthcare providers are overworked. They're booking
Mm-hmm.
people in 15-minute time slots and they're
Mm-hmm.
overbooked and they're bound by insurance companies and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of red tape. However, I say that there are some great conventional providers and
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of people who truly care about their patients.
Mm-hmm.
But the other side of that is there are a gazillion tests that can be ordered, and we don't
Mm-hmm.
just step in and order a bunch of tests that aren't necessary.
Right.
And there are a lot of health conditions that are extremely rare that many healthcare providers have never even heard of, and they've never seen a case.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not on their radar that it's a possibility. And then when it comes to autoimmune disease, when it comes to anything involving the endocrine system, which is all hormones, there is a lack of training when it comes to thyroid conditions, when it comes to PCOS, when it comes to syndromes that affect hormones, when it comes to menopause. And because there's a lack of education surrounding the endocrine system, people are not getting proper testing, they're not getting proper treatment. And autoimmune diseases, there are hundreds of autoimmune diseases, and it can take somebody 5 to 10 years and 7 different providers to get a
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis. Some people go their whole lives and never get a diagnosis. And then there are conditions like MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, Ehlers-Danlos, POTS. There's many conditions that are just not well known in conventional care, and there's really not a treatment protocol available. So if you do get a diagnosis, many healthcare providers don't know what to do. And even if you were to come to me, I
Mm-hmm.
specialize in certain things,
Mm-hmm.
and there are many conditions where I have to say, you know what, I'm not the best provider for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to refer you to a colleague of mine who can better assist you with this specific condition or these symptoms.
I love that. Yeah, I love that there's integrity in it versus just finding, how do I want to say this? I've heard this from many different people where they've gone to whatever their traditional doctor was, and maybe they've heard of a holistic approach, or through their research had a question that maybe wasn't status quo, and they found that the conventional doctor, seemed to be more offended or annoyed that they're bringing up some of these alternative options versus just listening to them. And to I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's mental health, physical health, relational health. If you're talking to someone that is you know very matter of fact that their way is the only way, that's, in my opinion, a big red flag. Right? Like, because no one has all the information, and even if someone's in the ballpark and they trust that they're in the ballpark, um, I think it's a rare occasion that we should be so matter of fact with someone that we're trying to convince them that our way is the only way and another opinion isn't even appropriate. Um, I found that a lot with my mother's journey with cancer. Right, their doctors were. It's just baffling to me, and I'm not on the physical health side by any. That's not my expertise, but it was wild to me how many doctors, while my mother was going through her cancer treatments, didn't even acknowledge, bring up, or give weight to nutrition.
Mhm.
Like, what
Same
the
with my
fuck?
mom.
Like, like, I don't even care. Like, there might be 1,000 other things that you have to do in order to manage the whatever the cancer is, or be amazing if we could cure it. But for them to almost be annoyed or frustrated at the idea that nutrition has anything to do with this, but instead chemo is the way. It's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, how are we this day and age with this much information, and so many people are still that resistant to the what I would assume to be the most basic, you know, frontline approach to any illness. Like, I don't know. I don't get it.
They told us the same thing, and because my mother battled colorectal cancer, and they told her she could eat whatever she wanted, and they were giving her the Ensure protein shakes, and I said, "Mom,
Hmm.
you're not drinking this crap. This is terrible." And
Hmm.
also, we know that most of us that have struggled with cancer have higher glucose levels, and
Mm.
there is a correlation, and that's why I take berberine to manage my glucose, and it's known as a cancer preventative as well, but it's balancing blood sugar. And we were told that we were told a lot of things that I was so caught off guard by when it came to my mother's care, and also just the bedside manner.
Right.
I think they see so many people that are dying and
Yep.
they just don't know how to cope. But it was not a fun place to be, which
Hmm.
it never is, to be at the cancer center. But just the way my mother was treated
Hmm.
was not good. And my mother was losing her mind because she was on a lot of pain medication, and they often got frustrated with her. And I think through that experience and through my own experience, I want to change the way people get care. And
Hmm.
also with thyroid care, there is a group of us that are lobbying for change, and we
Hmm.
want to change the standard treatment protocols for hypothyroidism and the standard testing. And
Hmm.
the amount of resistance that we get, it's very alarming, because why wouldn't you want to look at the data? Why wouldn't you want to have discussions around best possible outcomes for patients? Why do so many providers just want to stay stuck in what they've been taught? Which the
Hmm.
reality is, that's all it is. It's what we've been taught,
Hmm.
and you have to investigate outside of what you've been taught and make sure that you do the research to determine if what you've been taught is accurate or not.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, you and I have gone down this rabbit hole many a times, and we both have the similar experiences, unfortunately, with with psychology and psychiatrists and these kind of things, and so many. It's just wild to me how many are resistant to we'll call it the idea, right? I believe it's a little more than an idea, but to the idea that a lot of the symptoms that many people are diagnosed with, the psychological symptoms, are in fact just a root. They stem from a trauma response, right? Where a lot of the patterns of behavior that we would diagnose as a problem are actually just highly effective strategies to survive the environments that we may have been raised in or have been exposed to over long periods of time, as adults or whatever the case may be. I mean, there's so many factors, it'd be impossible to list them all, but it's just wild to me. And I have a similar experience, and we don't have to go down this conversation now, but I have a very, very big belief in the power of psychedelics when it comes to healing trauma and being able to, uh, make the appropriate um, strides towards establishing a healthier, sense of self and a more empowering identity than many of us, myself especially, for a long period of time, was operating from. And the fact that psychedelics aren't more widely available compared to antidepressants, right, is another example. And again, these are really, really, really big conversations that I'm in by no means an expert on, but I've experienced it enough to know that there's something here. And one strategy you know just saved my life, and the other didn't. So I think it's important. I think the big takeaway, it's important that no matter who you are, no matter where you live, if you're someone who is struggling with something that, for whatever reason, you've just not been able to find the answer in, more traditional, widely accepted approaches. I would strongly encourage to, at the very least, just go explore a holistic approach, right? There's someone somewhere that, will be able to talk to you, whether it's, someone local or someone that like yourself, that you may come across online, that you can, easily book a call with and have a conversation. But to get another, not just an opinion, but a completely different perspective on how something can be managed, or even diagnosed more appropriately, I think is really, if the big takeaway, right? Like, if you don't know anything else, just go get a couple different opinions, because I don't believe one is necessarily the end all be all versus the other, but I definitely believe that they could and should work very well together. And by no means do I think the practitioners should be in competition over whose approach is the right approach.
Right. Well, I think that you have to incorporate trauma healing and mindset into any healing journey that you're on. And I think a lot of people are not aware of
Mm-hmm.
patterns that they've created throughout
Mm-hmm.
their lives to be able to cope. Like, I didn't know I had trauma. I really didn't. I told my brother this weekend, and I
Uh-huh.
haven't seen my brother in a long time. And we were just talking, and I told him that I'd done a lot of mindset work and a lot of trauma
Mm-hmm.
healing, and that I didn't even recognize that I had trauma. And my brother is very defensive whenever we talk about our childhood. And he said, "Who told you you had trauma? You don't have any trauma from your childhood. Who told you that?" And I said, "I figured it out myself." And he said, "Well, I don't have any trauma. Our childhood was fine." And I said, "Well, I don't know about you, but the FBI raiding our house when I was 5, and our dad becoming a fugitive, and I visited him in the penitentiary when I was 14, and us finding out that we have 2 sisters and a brother, because my sister, when she was 18, came and found us and
Oh,
knocked on our
wow.
front door and was looking for my dad because he abandoned them, and my stepdad committed suicide when I was in high school." No, like, that's not
Mm.
trauma. You may
No.
think it's not trauma, but I recognize that those things definitely impacted me. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of it is around abandonment and not
Mm-hmm.
feeling loved and feeling like I was the problem that
Mm.
created all of the problems within our family. And my mom threw stuff all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
she yelled a lot, and my parents fought. And I don't blame my parents at all. Like, my parents did the best that they could, and I appreciate them, but I know that they had a lot of unhealed trauma that impacted the way that they parented and impacted their relationships with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I in no way blame them. I've
Mm-hmm.
just been able to recognize things that, in doing so, have helped me to heal and
Mm-hmm.
have allowed me to be successful and have allowed
Mm-hmm.
my relationships to be better. It's allowed my parenting to be better, my relationships with my older children to be better, and I've been able to set boundaries. So it's been life changing to recognize these things that shaped me and
Mm-hmm.
created behaviors, right? And it's not about how big the trauma is. I always say it doesn't have a scorecard. It's not like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, well, you went through this, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
1. You went
Yeah.
through this, so it's a 10."
Yep.
We have these traumas, micro traumas, and
Mm-hmm.
just different things said to us, about us, over us, and experiences that we have that shape the way that we live and behave, the way that we respond to things, the way we feel about comments and, different
Mm-hmm.
things that happen. And by recognizing those things, we can heal, and then we're free to be who we are, right?
Mm-hmm. 100%. I mean, there's so much here to unpack, and I also want to acknowledge too that anyone listening to this, it might be easy for them to have hear just the little bullet points that you just shared about your experience and immediately think to themselves like, "Oh, of course, like she's been through all that. Like I've not experienced any of those things, so I don't have any trauma. And I think you're absolutely right. If there's one way that I would love to kind of define trauma and the way in which we're describing it, right? The emotional trauma, the root cause. Trauma is really any experience that fractures the sense of safety and security. Are you a coach who has been struggling to do everything yourself? I mean, all of the content, the emails, the marketing, not to mention every time you open your phone, there's a new social media strategy that someone is pitching that just makes you feel like you'll never be able to keep up. When all you really care about is helping people in a meaningful way while building the kind of coaching business your family can depend on. I'm Matthew Paetz, the founder of Momentum, a growth agency that specializes in helping coaches just like you break through your first 100K. If you're a coach who is tired of trying to figure it all out themselves and you just want to build a business that works, then I'm going to encourage you to click the link in our show notes to take your 100K coaching assessment to find out if you're ready to unlock your six-figure potential today. Right? It can be a look that a parent gives you when you're a child. It can be, a comment a teacher makes. It can be any number of things. And, if we receive the same message enough times, one of the most, dare I say, traumatic moments in any of our lives is the moment that we begin to believe that that message is true, whatever that message may be. If it's that you're not enough, you're not smart enough, pretty enough, strong enough, whatever enough, right? To be lovable, to be successful, to be worthy, to be credible, like any of these not enough stories, can and often are the most damaging narratives in anyone's life. And I know we're gonna, kind of venture into the business conversation here shortly, but really it's those narratives, as that's where I do a lot of my work is helping people identify the shame stories in their life, and not only just unpack so that we could point fingers and say, see, that's why, even though that might be true, right? Like what we're experiencing, what we're going through is extremely justifiable, but there comes a point, I think, in all of our lives where no matter how justified our behaviors may be, we start getting sick of our own shit because almost like the intuition that you were describing around your illness, prior to being diagnosed with thyroid cancer. We often have a deep knowing, right? And it's hard to articulate. It's hard to really put words around what it is. But if you're someone who knows what I'm talking about, it doesn't need words, right? Because you just get it. And there's a deep knowing that what we're going through or what we've been through isn't it. And it doesn't have to be the whole story. And whatever the challenge or the patterns of struggle or depression or failure or abuse or whatever it is that we all experience, whatever the pattern may be, there is a way. There is absolutely a way. And it's probably facing something you don't want to face, right? And I say probably very loosely. It's absolutely something you don't probably want to face, at least at first. But when we get to the point that whatever the narrative, whatever the story of our life up to that point is, where we just can't do it anymore, I think that's oftentimes one of the most powerful intersections someone can find themselves. I think a lot of people, they struggle with something that I would identify as a functional suffering, right? Where everything is just okay enough. The struggle, the abuse, the depression, the anxiety, the illnesses, whatever it might be, all the above, heaven forbid. But it's just, it's so familiar that this is what it is, in many of their minds. It's that, I'm just like my mom, I'm just like my dad, I'm just like my whatever. And they dismiss these things as if it's just destiny or a part of who they are. And there's no way to avoid it or work through it or any of those things. And they spend their entire lives trying to overcompensate or avoid it, right? Only to make the issue probably much worse than it has to be. whether it's business, whether it's relationship with spouse, children, parent, whatever, and most certainly your health, because there's no way your body's not, absorbing all of these things. And over time, that stress is naturally going to wear away at the system, right? So, if anyone out there is feeling like something's off and they can't quite put their thumb on it, please go get a couple different approaches. Have the courage to call up something that seems weird and, you think your friends would say something weird about, or your family would make fun of, or whatever it is, because the truth be told, you may find someone that has a better understanding of what you're going through than, maybe the traditional, more common approaches. Um, so yes, to all of what you were saying. And without unpacking all of that too much, I imagine we should probably have many episodes where we just riff on some of these topics and go down rabbit holes. But there is one thing that I would like to bring, or I'd like to ask you about. And, the point of this podcast, and the point of, more than a business, the offer and the coaching and stuff that we're providing, is to really help entrepreneurs work through those parts, right? And create a life that has a deeper sense of meaning, deeper than just the revenue, deeper than just the vanity metrics and all that stuff that is so often promoted as success, but rather really identify, like, what is the life that they want to live most, the one that truly feels free to them. And free doesn't mean without responsibility, right? It's quite the opposite. The responsibility is freedom. Right? When we avoid responsibility, we find ourselves kind of stuck doing what everyone else wants us to do. But when we take the responsibility, we have the ability to create the life that we actually desire. But with that, I would love to hear a little bit, because you said something earlier in the conversation that stuck out to me, which is, how long ago was it that you and your husband owned your physical gym?
You froze, by the way.
Yeah, I know. It keeps doing that. Just heads up. This might be recording on both of our ends from what I
Okay.
understand. So it might have the whole conversation. But there's so much of what you were sharing, I didn't hear any of it.
Okay.
Like,
Well, we'll
so
just check it out, and if we have to do it again, we'll do it again.
perfect. Yeah. I don't know
Okay.
what it is. I don't know if it's the Wi-Fi. I don't know if it's the difference in settings, that kind of thing. I'm just trusting that it's there somewhere. If it's not, I'm learning a lot right now and I'm very interested. So, fuck them. Like,
Okay.
this is,
So go ahead. I know
yeah,
you were asking about the gym, so go ahead with that.
yeah, no, I'm very curious because, the thing that fascinates me the most is, your story. You found out about the diagnosis in your early 40s. Right? You went back to school to get your license and certifications at that point, or a few years after. It sounds like the original diagnosis. And during that time, you also owned a gym. Is that correct?
hmm So my
Right.
husband and I owned a gym for 6 to 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
and we closed during COVID.
Okay.
And I had started doing some healthcare prior to that. At that time, I had done my board certification. I did a certification program, did a board certification in holistic healthcare while
Mm-hmm.
I was doing a dual doctorate and PhD program in integrative medicine. So I started out as a holistic practitioner. Um, and at that time, I had learned a lot about labs. I'd learned a lot
Mm-hmm.
about holistic care. And then as time went on, I learned more. And we closed our gym. Honestly, we struggled the whole time we owned the gym. I
Mm.
honestly do not recommend opening a gym or any brick and mortar business unless you
Oh, fair.
have investors, unless you have at least 1 million in capital. I mean,
Mm.
you have to have capital. You have to have a way to sustain your business. It can take 5 years to grow
Mm-hmm.
a business that is sustainable, and we just did not know that. We had
It's
capital,
specifically a gym business you're referring to.
right.
Yeah.
You have to build membership, you need equipment, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot involved, you need employees,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot on the business side with the state. There's just a lot of cost, and we were pretty naive. I wanted to open a gym, and I had planned on it for years, and we opened a gym. And at the
Mm-hmm.
time, we had plenty of capital. My husband was working full time for a fitness company, and we thought we would live on his salary, and
Mm-hmm.
he would help me build the gym during the week. He traveled on the weekends, and we were going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And our overhead was pretty low in comparison to if we had opened up in a big city. So we went into it thinking we're going to drink protein shakes and teach a couple classes, and this is going to be
Mm-hmm.
groovy. And my
Mm-hmm.
husband was laid off about 6
Mm.
months after we opened. I
Okay.
was pregnant, and we weren't expecting either of those things. And all of a sudden, we were broke. We were
Mm.
flat broke. My credit was ruined. I had to short sell my house. Our cars were
Oh.
repossessed. Here I am pregnant. It was not a rodeo. It was not good at all. And we fought, and we were able to build something, and we got to a point where we were doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then COVID happened.
Mm.
And at the same time, I had been through the cancer ordeal. I was still going through some of it. And I thought, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm.
And we were offering online services. My husband took equipment to people's homes so they could do video classes with me. And I
Mm.
thought, I just don't want to do this anymore. I feel in my heart that we're done. We gave it our best shot. And then they reopened in Texas. They allowed us to reopen gyms and certain businesses at
Mm.
about 25% capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So people were coming back, and I
Mm-hmm.
thought, well, we'll give this another go. Then we had another shutdown. And that's
Mm-hmm.
when everybody started calling and canceling. And I said, well, we're closing. And people's responses were, why are you closing? We want to come back. And I said, well, everybody's canceling their memberships.
Mm.
And I also at that time had been with my kids more, and I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. And if we're going to close, now's the time. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned in all of that is sometimes our pride gets in the way,
Mm.
and our egos can keep us from a different path because you hold
Mm.
on so tight to what you have worked so hard to build, and you
Mm.
think you need to hold on to it, and you don't want anybody else to see you as a failure, so you're hanging
Mm.
on for dear life. And sometimes you just need to let go because you're being led down a different path.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a failure to me. I don't
Mm.
feel like we failed at all. I think we gave something our best shot. And I think it says a lot that we tried,
Mm-hmm.
but it was not working for us. And in that experience and all that we learned, we both have very successful careers now. And
Mm-hmm.
I think we needed to go through that experience to get to where we're at. We needed to learn the things that we did not do well. We needed to learn where our weaknesses were in
Mm.
business,
Mm-hmm.
and also recognize that sometimes you may have the best intentions, but it's just not what you're meant to be doing. And that's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
So there's so much gold here, and I'm personally kind of blown away. As much as I've known your story, to hear this now in this order is, um, it's kind of mind blowing, right? It's reminded me of a lot. But so I'm just going to recap for a moment before I ask the next question. So here you are in your early 40s. You go through this huge, trying to figure out goose chase, if you will, to figure, to identify what was going on with you physically, knowing something's off. But, so many professionals were saying that, it's just the anxiety. It's just this, it's just that, like, it's not that deep essentially. and then you finally get the appropriate information that you need. You get the first diagnosis of thyroid cancer. You start going through those treatments while you are later going to school now to get your doctorate, right? Then you find out even during that time that you have another form of cancer, cervical cancer, I think is what you said, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is all happening kind of in or around owning a gym full time for 5 to 6 years, kind of struggling to make ends meet, whatever that looked like. Obviously, there's a lot of stress that comes with owning your own business, especially a brick and mortar that's responsible for so many others, employees, etc. And then uh, that starts to go downhill due to unforeseen issues. Your husband gets laid off. You're now pregnant at that time. Then COVID hits, all while dealing with the cancers, all while dealing with all of these other stressors. And if you don't mind me asking, you're a mother of how many?
7. So I had 3. My husband
Uh-huh.
had 2 when we met, and then we had
Uh-huh.
2 together.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were working 5:30 a.m. to 9 p.m. trying to manage a family and everything else we had going on. And we were floating checks from 3 different bank accounts, trying to cover one before one went through. We were negative more times than not.
Yeah.
And people around us had no idea. And
Had no
people think
idea.
you own a business, you have money. And I was trying to figure
It's
out
usually the
how to feed my
opposite. I have
kids.
no money because I own a business.
Yeah. We were just trying to keep our heads above water. So we opened in 2014. My husband gets laid off. I was already pregnant right when he got laid off, and then we just focused on the gym together full time, and we had lost a full time salary. It was a significant salary and burned through our capital pretty fast.
Mhm.
And my mother, we were taking care of my mother because she was terminal with colorectal cancer. My mother, I decided to go ahead and open the gym because I was burning through savings taking care of my mother because I'd quit my job to take care
Mhm.
of her. So I got to the point where I said, I got to go ahead and do this if I'm going to do it. So we opened, and my mom went to live with my brother and his wife. And my mom passed away 2015, Thanksgiving Day
Mhm.
2015. And then I got pregnant with another baby. My 2 younger boys are 17 months apart. And then we had 3 teenagers living at home. So we had 5 kids in the house. And I don't remember a whole lot of that time period because it was so stressful and chaotic. And I'm trying to talk to people while I'm training. And it was just an interesting experience because I had one lady say, "Oh my goodness, the blind guy didn't show up to put in my custom blinds this morning." And I'm just staring at her, smiling, like my baby just threw up on me and I haven't slept all night. And I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to buy groceries. And not her fault by any means. That
Mhm.
was, what she was dealing with. But I had never experienced that type of struggle.
Mm.
And I cannot drive through that town right
Mm.
now because of the feelings, the emotions that it brings back, because
Mhm.
it was such a difficult time for me. And I'm thankful that I went through that because it taught me a lot. It gave me a lot of compassion for people who are struggling financially, who are going
Mhm.
through health crisis and crises
I'd mess it up.
um,
Don't worry.
and going through health situations
Yeah, going through some
and
shit.
and all different kinds of just life circumstances. Because prior to that, my life was pretty good, or so I thought. I was cruising along, never really had any huge situations through my adult life until all of this kind of compounded all at one time. And when we were doing well is when COVID hit. We were like,
Mhm.
oh, we're actually finally there, and then COVID hit, and it was really a blessing for us because we recognized that we didn't want it to own a gym anymore. We were tired, and my husband had started a deck and fencing company
Mhm.
on a whim because we needed money and we couldn't do it with just the gym. So he had volunteered to make a ramp for a church for free, and they started
Mhm.
recommending him to people, and it grew into this business. And he had a lot of experience from working with his dad growing up, and so we
Mhm.
started that business. And then got hired on by a big company to run a crew, and they put him through extensive training. And so that kind of took him on a path into what he does now. And he helps me some with my business. And then my health journey has led me into what I do now. And I think that the thing to take away from it is let things teach you, right? So in
Mhm.
the past, I ran from
Mhm.
things and I buried things and I did everything to cope. But if you let things teach you, then you can learn from your experiences and you can let it teach you about yourself and teach you about where you should be guiding your energy at the point you're at in your life, because I don't have the same interest or the same
Mm.
passions as when I was in high school. I don't weigh the same
Mhm.
as I did when I was in high school. So,
Mhm.
we're constantly evolving and changing, and we're living, breathing beings, and we're going to adapt and grow and change over time. And I think we always have to be open to learning about ourselves, learning from experiences from each other. And I think a lot of people are afraid to do that because
Mm.
it can be uncomfortable, and some things you don't want to face, some things you don't want to know. But if you don't allow yourself to do that, then you just stay stuck where you're
Mm.
at.
Right. Yeah, whatever the story is, it doesn't have to be the whole story, right? That
Right.
doesn't have to, how it's going doesn't have to be how it ends. And, something that I'm really taking away from this conversation, despite all the points I'm probably missing because it keeps cutting out. But honestly, the thing that I'm really absorbing right now is this theme in your life that is quite, I mean, the word astonishing keeps coming up. Not a word I use too often. So, but any one of those experiences, I mean, literally just a single, pick one, doesn't matter which one of those that you described that you've been through personally, you and your family, it would stop people dead in their tracks, right? They would just, it would be too much, whether it be too overwhelming, or they would feel helpless, or they have no agency over how the outcome. They would just kind of take it. And you have not only endured more than most, but you are now sitting here in remission with a beautiful family. I mean, the fact that y'all didn't get divorced during this time is impressive, right? And yet here you are. Not to say that you didn't have your challenges, obviously, some probably more significant than others, but in a beautiful relationship with your husband, you have a great relationship with your children. You are now doing work that I know fulfills you and gives all of what you shared uh, more meaning, right? Not just a validation, but the fact that you've been there is what makes you so capable to support people in the way that you do, and understand them in a way that most physicians just never could. Fuck it, people never could, let alone some of the physicians that they're probably seeing or have seen. And on that note, I would just be super curious. We don't have to get into the numbers, but to my knowledge, you guys are no longer, worried about keeping the lights on and floating checks from one bank to the other, unless it's an investment account. So I would love to to hear, just if you had one piece of advice, not even just that you would give yourself, right? But if you were to be talking to someone that is, has just made the decision, or they've been trying to find traction in their business, but they're doing something of service, right? They're genuinely showing up to help people, most likely because of the pain that they've been through, right? And that what they wanted to do is turn that pain into something more meaningful and be a resource, a support for others that might be going through something similar, right? But they're struggling on the business side of it. And I love to really focus on helping people from that 0 to 100K in a year time frame. And on that note, before we get into the lesson, I'd be super curious to know one thing. What was it like for you when you went and did your online? You shifted from the gym. You went from the gym closing and all of those struggles to going online. Inevitably, spinning wheels for a while in that area, and then finally something clicks, and you're able to reach that milestone of your first 100K in a year. Right. And, I don't give a shit about the money. The money means that I don't care about the money conversation, but I am curious to know what was it like to have gone through all of that and then to hit that milestone that in and of itself is such a challenge, right?
So it used to be that I was afraid to ask people for even $500 for a 12-week program, and I would sweat and get nauseous, and sometimes I would reschedule the call.
Yeah.
And I had to do a lot of work around money mindset. I
Hmm.
just was taught certain things as a child,
Hmm.
and we are conditioned to believe certain things about work and money. And I learned that money is an exchange. It's constantly being exchanged. If it's not in your
Hmm.
bank account, it's in somebody else's.
Hmm.
And it's just constantly being exchanged. And I learned that I have value and I offer value. And
Hmm.
I don't have to be afraid to offer services and charge a fee for those services.
Hmm.
And I still wake up sometimes, and sometimes I cry. I get very emotional sometimes because I cannot believe at
Hmm.
how different our lives are now
Hmm.
because of the success that I've had.
Hmm.
And it was not easy. It did
Hmm.
not come overnight.
Hmm.
And I did a lot of work. I did a lot of
Hmm.
work, and I continued to do mindset work with you.
Hmm.
And I can continue to do mindset work on my own, a lot of
Hmm.
journaling, a lot of self reflection. And I also was in school at the same time trying to grow a business. And at the time, I was by myself. I didn't know how to delegate responsibility
By
well.
yourself in your business.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. So in my business, trying to, do all of the scheduling, all of the calls, all of the admin, all the emails,
I'm
everything.
starting to get anxiety.
And at first it was okay because I was
Hmm.
still rather small.
Right.
And then I hit a rapid growth spurt, and I was juggling so many clients at one time.
Hmm.
And that was overwhelming. I went back to working sun up to sundown, which is something I
Hmm.
did not want to do.
Hmm.
And that's a coping mechanism, which is something else we can talk about. And now I have a team of 5 people,
Hmm.
and one person is full time, the rest are part time. And we have plans to add on more employees
Hmm.
over the next year as we
Hmm.
grow. And I have a manager in place to manage people because I don't want to manage people.
Hmm.
And it's been amazing because when I first hired somebody, I said, I don't know what I'm going to have you do, but I think I need to hire somebody, and we're just going to figure it out together.
Yep, I
And
remember this conversation.
we did. We figured it
Hmm.
out. And I learned to let go. I learned to trust people with content, with emails, with messaging people. And I was able to recognize that that's okay. I don't have
Mhm.
to be everything to everybody, and I can't
Mhm.
do it all because
Mhm.
that's not a sustainable business model for
Mhm.
where I'm at with my growth. And my husband and I went from barely being able to pay the bills and having to
Mhm.
say no to my kids for dance, for different
Mm.
activities, and didn't even have gas to go pick up the kids if we, wanted to pick them up from somewhere, if we wanted to go to dinner. We didn't have the money for that. And I remember being in that place and thinking, how am I ever going to get out of this mess that we're
Mm.
in? And I just started trying and
Mm.
trusted the process. And it slowly grew. And then I hit several growth spurts at different times. And now we're doing 100K months.
Mhm.
And it's we have taxes and all that,
Oh, yeah.
which that's a whole new thing to tackle
Yep.
when you're in business and especially when you're generating a lot of revenue.
Mhm.
Um, but we go on vacation and our boys are in activities. We've been able to help our older kids with a lot of things that we
Mhm.
just couldn't. And it has been so incredibly amazing. And I felt like such a failure at one point. I felt like
Mm.
I can't take care of my kids, I can't give them what they want. And really, when I decided to go online and start this process, we still own the gym. And I had been doing this for a few years while we owned the gym. I think 1.5 to 2 years. And my vision was I just want to be able to give my kids what they need. And I
Mm.
want to be able to support them in the future. If they need help
Mhm.
buying a house, if they need help with certain things as adults, I want to be able to help them with those things
Mhm.
and give them some security. And it turned into our whole lives are different, but not just because we are financially stable. And I've
Mhm.
learned a lot about investing now, which I never knew anything about investing. I just thought you kept your money in the bank and that's where
Mhm.
it stayed. But you can actually grow your money if you put it in the right
Mhm.
places.
Mhm.
Um, but we've grown as people. I think my children are
Mm.
better people because of what they've experienced.
Mhm.
And my husband and I, we have an amazing relationship. And we've commented that, most people wouldn't make it through all of the struggle that we've been through.
Mhm.
It's a lot when you're financially struggling and you want to buy a t-shirt for $12 and your husband's mad because you don't have $12 to buy the t-shirt, or you want a coffee, right?
Mhm.
And there's a lot of stress involved. And we have just grown together and we're a team. And he said the other day,
Mm.
I don't think most people have ever felt like this. I don't think most people have a relationship like this. And it's only because we stuck together and we've done a lot in communicating and a
Mhm.
lot in discussing how we feel. And,
Mhm.
we had a really hard time because I became very successful and
Mhm.
we had to close the gym. So there's a
Mhm.
little bit of failure in the emotional roller coaster that you go through when
Of
you have to
course.
close a business. I think he
Yeah.
felt like we failed. And then I was having all this success, and then I'm talking to different people online, and I think he had a hard time with understanding that and accepting that because he's supposed to be the provider. And
Mhm.
we work through all that. It's like, look, we're a team and we're doing this together, and it doesn't matter who's doing what. We're just doing
Yep.
this together. And that's been huge for us.
Well, and that's something that I would love to have another conversation about specifically because, it's when you listen to a lot of conversations, on entrepreneurship and business and stuff, it's, to be expected, you're going to talk about money, right? It's to be expected, you're going to talk about strategy and all of these kind of things and the struggles that inevitably come with, growth and fails and all these things. But what what I truly believe, and I've had this conversation with Allison recently, that does not get enough airtime, and I don't say that lightly, is what it's like for a couple and a family while starting or running a business or keeping one afloat or whatever, stage one may be in. I don't think there's enough conversation on couples who have navigated those seas and are able to speak to it with some experience, with some wisdom. Because I find that so often, when people, especially in the very beginning, right? Because as you know, I work with a lot of people on the front end of their conversation as far as starting a business or scaling it. And the assumption is the business is going to save. You're fine.
I
The
love my
assumption is that,
pets, but
look, I got my door shut too, so don't worry. And I'm just hoping that we have this entire conversation recorded, to be honest with you. But that's all. I'll cry when we stop recording. But the thing that I think doesn't get enough airtime because there's not enough people maybe that understand it, are because it was what I was saying was, when people first start their business, I think there's a belief and a hope that the business, once it starts to gain some traction, it will solve many of the problems that the family or the couple may be experiencing, right? And that can be true to some regard, right? That it will solve some problems, but there are so many layers and levels to growing a business that does not get spoken about, whether it's because people are afraid to, whether it's because it gets too messy and people don't want to share that side of their story. All of that is fair, but that's the part that so many struggle with. Like when I first start working with people, I ask them like, what relationship dynamics are most important to them? Do they have a spouse? Do they have a partner of some sort? Do they have children? Do they have, who in their life are they the closest to that will be the most impacted by any change, positive or negative, they make? And once they identify what those relationships typically are, and it's usually one or two, right? Maybe three, but rarely is it, more than 4 or 5. It's really not. It's 1, 2, or 3 people that you really care about the most. And the question I'll follow up with is, what are you afraid will happen when this changes, right? Or what are you afraid, what are you afraid your business will disrupt? Right. And at first it can be confusing for people, whether it's a little jarring or, they've never really considered it before because the assumption is the business is going to solve so many other problems. But there is a reality. And like you said, it can be unique and it can be unexpected that, there's struggle in when the business is not doing well, right? There's a lot of stresses. There's also a lot of stresses that come with the business doing really well that, you just, most people, unless they've been there or know someone who has, cannot foresee or predict. And I think that conversation is so important because, all the metrics of, oh, the business is successful because of the market and the offer and the marketing strategy and all this stuff. Yeah, fucking nice. But, what's in the wake of that? What's behind those closed doors? Right. And, my interest is how can couples, whether they're running a business together, they're each running their own business separately, or one of them is starting to run the business and the other, isn't an entrepreneur, right? And they don't necessarily understand all that comes with it. How do those couples remain teammates and each other's, rock when there's going to be so many moments where one or both are just not themselves?
yeah. Well, and from my experience, I think a lot comes down to communication and
Mm-hmm.
explaining the structure of the business and who's involved.
Mm-hmm.
Because my husband was just like, who is that you're talking to? And why are you on this group call? And there's, 10 different people on this call. He
Mm-hmm.
felt very left out. And
Mm-hmm.
that's because I did not tell him a whole lot about what I was doing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I had signed up for a business coaching program, which is where I met you.
Mm-hmm.
And then I became a coach for that program.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working more and more coaching. And then I had my own business. And I just didn't give him enough detail so that he could understand. And I think also time blocking is important, because
Mm.
when you're an entrepreneur, it's very easy to just work, 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 and you don't have a cutoff in your schedule. And I was working nights, weekends, I was on calls when we were driving somewhere, and it was interfering a lot with my family time.
Yeah.
And I think he just started feeling like he wasn't getting the same attention that he
Hmm.
was when we had the gym. And also, I think if we had the gym during the time frame that I had started doing a lot of the mindset work with you,
Hmm.
and really started healing a lot of my trauma and shifting my perspective, I probably would still have my gym. I don't know. I
Mm.
probably would be running a hybrid, or somebody would be managing the gym and I would be managing the health clinic. But the things that I know now, I did not know when we owned the gym. Not only the business things that were imperative to know, but also I lacked confidence,
Mm.
and I lacked a lot of perspective on life and dealing with people,
Mm.
and not getting triggered by things that, at the time, I didn't even recognize I was triggered, but it impacted my ability to be successful in business. And that's the thing. I don't care how much people learn about send these emails this many times a week and run this campaign, and you're going to close your calls this way, which I honestly don't do a lot of what is taught in
Hmm.
those programs. I do
Yeah, me
some, I
neither.
pick and choose.
Yep.
And we've talked about this. I like to be true to myself, and there's certain
Yep.
things I do not like the way it makes me feel. I don't want to
Hmm.
feel like a sleazy car salesman. And I give people the opportunity to make a decision if they want to work with
Hmm.
me or not.
Hmm.
And I am in the business of helping people. And by doing that, I make money. I'm not
Hmm.
helping people to make money. It comes because I am providing services, and I want to be different. I don't want to be like every other person out there providing services online. I want somebody, when they speak with me, to say, I notice a difference in you. I notice that you actually listen to me and that you
Mm.
truly care about me. That's what I want people to walk away with. And I don't want anybody to be rejected. I don't want anybody to feel
Mm.
like if they can't afford my services, that they are being rejected, because that's what happens if somebody cannot afford your services. If you're the one saying no,
Hmm.
they feel rejected, even if they're the ones saying no in response to, well, there's no way I can afford that.
Right.
My goal is for everybody to feel like they get value, that they're heard, and that they get some kind of service from me, which may be my subscription to my app. It
Hmm.
may be, just labs and a foundational treatment plan, or it may be my 12-week intensive program.
Hmm.
But I'm here to help human beings. I'm not here to make as much money as possible and leave people out in the process. I see a lot of coaches say, well, you want to work with this type of person. They have money, they're wealthy,
Hmm.
they're in a healthy mindset, they're the best clients. I want to help everybody.
Mm.
And that, I think, is what I've taken away most from doing work with you.
Mm.
And something that I think 5 years ago, I would not have been able to have the confidence to say, "Hey, I'm not gonna follow your sales pitch. I'm not gonna follow this or that, because I just wanna be true to myself." And that works great for a lot of people, but I'm
Hmm.
going to listen to my intuition. I'm gonna take the bits and pieces that I find valuable and then implement that with what feels good to me.
Hmm.
And my whole point when I first got on this tangent you can learn all the business strategies, but
Mm-hmm.
if you're not doing the deep work, if you're not helping yourself, if you're not getting to the root of where your struggles are and learning to be the best version of yourself that you can be so that you can truly live your purpose and
Mm.
you can provide the best services possible and you can get out of your own head, you can just be 100% free in helping people. You will struggle with your business because I
Mm-hmm.
struggled in the beginning and I struggled with my gym until I did that deeper work. And once I started
Mm-hmm.
doing that deeper work, I started having success. I started hitting milestones. And then all that strategy combined with that absolutely can make a difference. And now there's things that I implement because of where I'm at in my business with my growth. But I will always do the mindset piece. I will never stop trying to be the best version of myself. I'll never stop trying to open my mind more. I'll never stop learning from people that I admire and learning from people that I see they're in a place that I strive to be at, right? I just
Mm-hmm.
want to learn as much as possible because that only helps me and it also helps my clients, right? It's helping all the people that I help, the more that I can obtain knowledge. And knowledge isn't necessarily the right word because it's more about just freedom in
Mm.
who you are.
Mm-hmm. I love all of this more than you. I mean, you get it, but you know what? You're such an example for so many reasons and so many levels. Truly, everything from the stories you've been sharing about the struggles and the successes and endurance with your health journey, with your relationship with your husband and your children, with your businesses, and now understanding the layers of financial responsibility that you currently have. You're such an example, and the thing that I love about this is the one through line has been to trust yourself, right? It wasn't a new strategy that broke the seal for you and then all of a sudden you just like landed in some like pot of gold. It wasn't, the algorithm. It wasn't all of these things. Like, yes, that's a part of business. Yes, those are things that will be necessary to discuss at certain stages. But I find that there's so many people putting so much pressure on that part of their business success, whatever that looks like for them, whatever they want that to be. And there's so many people selling them the idea that they must do the marketing a certain way, they must do this strategy, they must use this software, they must use this social media platform, or else they will never be successful. And in fact, the breakthrough was that you started to gain a real deep sense of clarity around who you were, right? What you bring to the table because of what you've experienced firsthand. And then you just went out and found some information and found some support that allowed you to hone that in and organize your experiences and organize your goals and your business strategies in such a way that it actually feels like a business that not only has a meaning and a purpose, but one that creates freedom, right? Because I find, and I know you know these people as well, there's so many people that believe that if their business just becomes X, right? If they just make this much money, right? If their business becomes impressive enough, then that will feel like freedom. But in reality, it's the opposite, right? It's about identifying like who are you truly, right? Not who you're trying to appear as if, but who are you truly? And then from there, identifying, well, what does success mean to you? What does freedom mean to you? And I do mean your definition, whoever's listening, right? Your actual definition. It takes work to be able to answer that with some confidence and some understanding. But to be able to identify what freedom means to you and your family, and then build the business that supports that definition, right? Instead of building a business that appears impressive in hopes that feels like freedom, right? Because it won't, unfortunately. And like you said, I find too many people out there looking for a new strategy when really all they're missing is clarity, right? That's it. And I mean clarity in self, right? Who are you? What do you bring to the table? What have you been through? What are you avoiding, right? And what is the support and the tools you need to be able to face those things with with feeling just safe enough to start taking those steps, right? Um, there's so many details, and you've shared so many beautiful uh, little nuggets of wisdom. And really, what I hope people hear, if they hear nothing else, it's trust yourself, and you can have the successes that you're experiencing firsthand that have become sustainable and aren't just like here and gone, right? You've learned how to make these things sustainable, so you can reach the levels that you have doing it your way, and doing it in a way that is human, right? Human first, not human second, third, or fourth, as long as you pay me. Right?
And
and
genuine,
and
genuine,
genuine, right? It's genuine because, again, safety is felt, it's not sold. And when it comes to transformation of any kind, human beings will never start to heal or transform in a meaningful way until they feel safe enough to start, you know, leaning into the parts of them that they're afraid aren't enough, or they're afraid that if anyone ever learns or sees, they won't love them, they won't respect them, they won't like them, they won't trust them, whatever the conversation may be. All the above, if you have stories like ours. Right? But um I love it. I mean, there's so much here, and I really hope we have all of this recorded. Um, but what I'll ask just really quickly, if you would just close it on one thing, if you were someone that is really wanting to create a business that has an impact, that is of service, that really makes a difference in other people's lives, and you're trying to figure out what to do or how to do it, what would you advise a complete stranger, knowing nothing else other than they really give a shit? They really want to do good for others, and they really want to be able to do it full time.
contact you. So I think that it's in
That was not
reverse.
planned. Thank you.
I think it's in reverse. I think that a lot of people focus on the strategy first, and I have to have this system and this strategy, and I got to do these things. And I think it's important to do the self work first. And you can do that in conjunction with determining how to structure a business, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to do the work. You have to be open to receiving. That was a huge problem for me. I was not open to receiving in relationships and money. I was very guarded, and I did not
Mm-hmm.
even know that about myself. It took some time to recognize that,
Mm.
and you have to be confident, because if you are going to be online and you're going to speak your truth and you're going to put that out there, there are going to be naysayers, there are going to be haters, you're going to get called all kinds of names. And you know what, when you're speaking your truth, when you're in your purpose, that is completely normal. And I several years ago, it would have shut me down. Some of the
Mm.
comments that are made about me online. I'm called
Mm-hmm.
stupid, ugly, fat. I'm called all different kinds of names.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not trigger me anymore. I remember texting Matthew a couple of years ago because somebody made a comment online, and I was just so distraught. And now I think every comment is a compliment, unless
Mm.
it has been specified that it is meant to be ugly or derogatory. And in those
Mm.
cases, I just feel sorry for the person making the comment, because I know their life is miserable and they're just trying to bring me down. And so my hope for those people is that they go out and live the life they want to live and focus more energy on themselves versus trying to bring other people down. So you have
Mm.
to learn how to be confident if you're going to be online and you're going to be putting yourself out there in front of strangers, because that's a part of it. And
Mm.
that's why the mindset piece is so important. But the one thing that I would tell you is start getting your thoughts and your ideas on paper or on a
Mm.
recorder. I do this a lot. I'll drive in my car and just speak, and some of it
Mm.
doesn't even make sense. It doesn't even form sentences, but
Mm-hmm.
I get it out so that my creativity and my thoughts are on paper or on recording, and then I'm able to process those things later. And you need to have a clear understanding of what it is that you want to do in servicing people. How do you
Mm.
want to service people? What type of people are you interested in helping? I
Mm-hmm.
help people struggling with hypothyroidism, with hyperthyroidism, with autoimmune diseases, in menopause, any endocrine problem, and also with weight loss. And that's really the majority of people that I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to get clear on who it is you're helping, because your message is going to be speaking to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to systems and processes, you don't have to have a whole lot to start. You can just start posting videos or content that's written content, and have a link for people to click and book a call with you. And
Mm.
you talk with them, and you're able to work with them one on one. When I first
Mm-hmm.
started, I had a spreadsheet, and people would get a spreadsheet and they'd get information, and I would check in with them weekly. Super simple. Now I have an app, and I have a patient
Yeah.
portal, and I have all kinds of systems and automations, but I didn't start there. And I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes people go too big, and it's kind of like, if you haven't made a dollar,
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to focus on making $100,000. Just
Mm-hmm.
start with the dollar, and then
Yeah.
build from there. And it's the same with your business structure and strategy. Just start with
Mm-hmm.
the basics, and as you grow, you're able to expand and build in better processes, systems, and hire people. But you
Mm-hmm.
don't hire people in the beginning if you don't have anything for them to do, or you don't have the money. And even with a podcast, I just started a podcast several months
Mm-hmm.
ago. I would not have been able to handle that even a year ago. It was not the right
Mm-hmm.
time. And
Mm-hmm.
so you've got to understand when things have a time and place. And the first step is really just to understand who you are and start getting your message out, understand what you want your message to be and who you're speaking to, and then start working with a few people. And you can even
Mm-hmm.
offer beta programs where you're
Mm-hmm.
offering, a free program. In return, they give you their feedback,
Mm-hmm.
and you're able to get some testimonials through that process, and then
Yep.
just start working with people and
And
build from
trust
there.
yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Start to trust yourself. That's amazing. And you're absolutely right. Too often people try to mirror, the ones they look up to instead of getting clear on where they are and what the next step for them, you know, given their circumstance, given their level of, you know, ability and resources and all the things, right? Everyone is unique enough that it requires us to get clear on us before we can go out and become that, whatever that is for anybody.
Well, and
Um,
some of those business coaching programs, their strategy that they use on me, because they contact me all the time. I'm like, bro, I would not dare hire you, because I would not use that strategy on anybody.
mhm.
So,
Right. And that's where it
it's
comes back to
go
trusting
ahead.
yourself. I was going to say, trusting yourself on the other side too, as a client, as a potential customer, as a whatever, trust your gut, right? They may have all the words, they may have all the things. It may look fancy. It might be look whatever, but trust who you feel called to work with. And I say it all the time when I get on the call with people. It's like, my discovery calls, sales calls, whatever, like they're not sales calls. They're legit. Let's see if this makes sense. And I'll tell them straight up, you can say no. Like, I'm not going to be everyone's everything. And it took me a long time to be okay with that, but I give them full permission to say no, and it's not going to hurt my feelings. I may ask what it is that, isn't, resonating with them, just so that I have some clarity and some awareness. So if it's something that, I can either clarify, or if it's something that I could take note of that might help me better serve or speak more clearly, or, make someone feel a little more comfortable, I want to know. But if it's just, hey, I don't want this and I'm afraid to tell you because I don't want you to, one, try to hard close and not let me off the phone until I put $500 down or else, or I'm just scared and I want to say no, and I don't know that I'm ready, but I also don't want to disappoint you, or I don't want to make you feel bad or make you feel like I'm saying no to you because it's personal. Like, no, if it's a no, it's okay. And if it's a not yet, that's fucking great. And if it's a yes, buckle up because we're about to get messy.
Yeah.
Right. But that's the stuff. And if there's one thing I can promise is that, if we do ever work together, you'll never be alone, period. Right. Even if we're both lost, damn it, we're going to be walking around together. So,
Well, and I have a lot of people circle back around months or even a year later who
same.
originally on a call, they just weren't ready. And there's many reasons for that. And I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of coaches get emotional about it
Mm-hmm.
and take it personal, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
personal. It just may not be the right fit at the right time, or they don't have the finances. And I think also on calls we have the ability to recognize when somebody's not the right fit for our program,
Yep.
and I recognize that often, and there's
Yep.
red flags, and
Even if they can
I
pay in full and they want to do it right now, they'll pay you double.
yeah.
No.
Yeah, and I know those people aren't gonna get the results that they
Yep.
want, so I will put them in my lower ticket program, or I'll refer them to you sometimes if they need mindset work first,
Uh-huh.
or to somebody else that would be a better fit if I feel
Yeah.
like they're not the right fit for my program. So again, that's trusting yourself, trusting your intuition. And I just think too, it's hanging on for the ride. This has been a bumpy road. And
Mm.
some days I wake up and I've got imposter syndrome flaring.
Oh yeah.
And there's just different phases that we go through in the entrepreneur journey. And you just have to hang on. And I think too, having a support group,
Mm-hmm.
even if you're not in a coaching program, or you're not working with somebody, everybody needs support. So
Mm-hmm.
finding a support group where you can discuss things with other entrepreneurs and you've got a team of people behind you, I think that's also very important.
Mm-hmm. It's imperative, right? And that's a whole nother topic that we can get into. But it's imperative. And most people, when they're starting any transformation, be it a weight loss, be it a healing journey, be it a business, be it whatever, the majority of the people around them are not on the same page, right? Whether they don't believe, they think it's weird, they think it's stupid, it's too risky, whatever their thing is, they're typically surrounded by people that are just not on the same page, even people that care. And that can oftentimes be the most difficult part of the entire process, is just finding groups of people that can actually talk the way that talk about things you want to talk about, and can share the same struggles and understand what you're going through, and it not be met with, see, that's why you shouldn't have done this to begin with. Right,
Yeah.
I told you you couldn't do it. Instead, you be around people that are like, let's fucking get it, like, I know this sucks, let's go again, like, I'm with you. So yes, yes, yes. So I will say, we'll just kind of wrap this up here because it's been so good, and there's so many things I want to continue to speak on, and I am keeping all of my fingers crossed that this entire conversation has been recorded some way somehow. If the tech gods are here, I'm sending that prayer because, damn it. But if not, even if so, I would love to have 52 more of these conversations because they're so important. And again, you represent an example for so many. Again, a mother, a wife, not just one child, but many at different stages, many different businesses, health concerns, stages of your life. You've experienced so many things, and again, just one of them would be a justifiable reason to have not gone any further. And yet here you are, being of complete service and taking care of those around you. And it all started because you care, right? You cared about yourself and getting better. You cared about your family and being better for them. And you care about every single client and potential client and human being I've ever known you to come in contact with. And sometimes just knowing that there's one person that cares is all we need to really start a journey to something better. And I love you for it. I appreciate you for it. I appreciate all that have your back, because I know this isn't done alone. And they allow you to do what you do, and me, and I know many others are forever grateful. So thank you, Jamie. I'm excited to revisit some of this and continue this conversation, and continue to celebrate the wins, not just yours, but those that are coming through your program, and the transformations they're experiencing. I'm excited to share some of that for people, so they can maybe hear a story that feels like their own, right?
Yeah.
So thank you. I appreciate you, and I can't wait to make sure all this still works, the tech stuff.
Well, thanks for having me. And we could
Um,
probably go for 4 hours straight.
oh, I know.